Well, people are going to be trickling in. So maybe what we could do is, like, you shared a little bit about what got you into Web3. I'd love to hear about what you actually are doing now, what your company does to give background, and then we can get into Web1 to Web3. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm a director of product at Celsius. What Celsius is doing, basically, we are trying to bring, all this innovation and financial opportunities and financial freedom to all people. That's how I would describe it. So if you take, a traditional banking system, we try to make those services more open and more fair for everyone. So that's we started our journey back in 2017. I joined Celsius as a project early in 2018, and it was right at the ICO time. So in April 2018, we went through the ICO, and then during the summer, our first mobile app and wallet went live. So it was a pretty fun journey during these 4 years to go from 0 to 1.7 million users, or from 0 to more than 20 billion in assets under management. Yeah, we are growing pretty fast. We grew last year from 150 employees to close to 1,000 employees in a year.
Wow.
So that was, also very fun experience, and something that you cannot see frequently, if you just observe it as a case study. That is also very, very interesting to look at and see all pros and cons of that journey. So yeah, about my role, as I said, I'm director of product. At this phase now, I'm leading product management and product delivery as well. Product delivery is more focused on the processes and how we can actually effectively deliver the value to the market, while product management is more focused on the business and the strategy part of the product. So
you're in the process. You basically built a new version of a bank that you've scaled to 1.7 million users in a 4-ish year period of time. You added hundreds of new employees last year, and you still had time to reply to me on Twitter and to start meeting with me on a pretty regular basis. And I just want to point out to everybody, like, how cool that is, first of all, Petar, but also the space we're in is so open that you can actually reach out to most people and they want to build together, right? Like, Petar, as we get into this, right, and we get into talking about it, why would you even spend the time meeting with me if you're adding that many employees and creating that much value?
So that's a cool question. For me, first thing would be, I really enjoyed this experience, and I really love the industry that we are in, and I really think that we are happy to be part of that. And then I would love to share that experience, and help as many people as possible to go from the Web 2 to Web3 space, or to just join Web3 space. Maybe, they're not at all familiar with Web 2 as such, but, just to onboard new people to our space. So what you actually started, and what Banyan DAO is doing, is somehow the intersection of my passions, because you have, Web3 as its core, you have product, you have education, you have DAO as well, which is very interesting concept to me. And which I love to explore on my own, So that was literally, when I saw your tweet, I was like, I want to be part of this, and I want to contribute, but I also want to learn with this group of people, So that's, that kind of let's say openness and transparency is at its core is very important to me personally as well, and I really enjoy it. So as I said, like I would love for these kind of discussions and these kind of movements to be open and to have as many people as possible.
You gave me so much confidence because, right, like we're just a small group of people. We're meeting, we were dreaming about this day on April 29th, way out in the future. And having somebody that's experienced like you reach out and help and talk through a lot of this stuff, all of a sudden I went from being like, oh, this is a small thing to, oh, like actually the entire world is our opportunity at this point in time. And I think it's because you took that community first approach. And so as we get ready to talk about from Web 1 to Web 3, I want to talk about like you basically have technology and you've got community, right? Community, culture, kind of the same thing, right? And if we see new technology happen, and then that enables humans to respond and kind of build on that technology. So if we think about like the printing press is an easy one, right? Like there was a period of time before the printing press when things were very unified, right? Institutions were very solid. We can go back and do all kinds of history, but all of a sudden the printing press allows people to be able to share ideas, free flow of ideas. And you see dozens of movements spring up because people are finally able to talk and print newspapers. And so the printing press happens, culture responds. Let's talk about Web 1, then Web 2, then Web 3, so we can talk about what happened there. Let's talk about Web 1. What did Web 1 do, and what was the basic underlying technology?
Yeah, so if you like, literally everyone would say, it's read, so it enabled people to put their ideas, but it wasn't interactive, but like you were able to capture your ideas and put them globally available. So obviously, it wasn't easy for someone to step upon your website, and to hear about your ideas. You still needed, billboards and traditional, let's say, offline promotion for someone to go. And obviously, not many people were able to access the internet back then. But one thing that was available, and that was a revolution, if you look at it from this point, is that you were able to transfer information and to make it available globally.
Yep.
And then okay, maybe you want to before we go to Web 2.
Yeah, so we had the basic technology like HTTP, right? So that you had an address that you could go to, you could put your thoughts up, you could build a company off of it, right? Like we saw some of the early companies, they had to work from the bare metal basically to be able to build services, right? Like to build PayPal was incredibly difficult. Today we could probably build something like PayPal this afternoon with the group of people here, right? Like we built technology on top of it that made it easier. And that got to the point where for Web 2, we made it really easy to be able to create user accounts. Bandwidth became higher so that users could download more things. Storage became cheaper. So all these technologies are growing and it enables Web 2.0. And what does Web 2.0 enable?
Yeah, basically it enables us to interact. So it's not about read only anymore, it's about read and write. So basically the way how we are sharing information was changed. And along with that, it's not just the way how we're sharing information, but the mass of information also changed, and it's not a linear process. So you have on one side you have applications, on the other side you have the infrastructure and the tool stack, and it goes in steps. One is pushing another, and in those phases you move to the moment. At one point you say, okay, we now we have mobile phones, and we are able to access the internet from anywhere. So it's not anymore about sitting on your computer and having dial-up connection or something like that. So as you said, the technology and the infrastructure in the background was going through the revolution as well. The way how we consume and how we produce the content was changing. Our behaviors were changing as well, and it was in cycles going to the going through this revolution. But at one point what happened is that it's not always positive. You have ups and downs. So I think that was the reason behind the Web3, the whole Web3 movement, and the values that we are talking about here, was that like the internet as we know it is not sustainable, and centralization as such, and the way how we control the content, not we, but big companies here, centralization and the way how you control the content, how the behavior is being changed, that's something that wasn't sustainable. And of course we are still not in the phase of mass adoption of Web3, but we are changing it one step at a time.
Yeah, so Web1 created a protocol so that the internet could be decentralized and that no one could control the whole internet. Web2 comes along, onboards billions of people, allows us to be able to create business models, allows people to understand kind of what is a startup, how do you scale a startup quickly. So all of a sudden these companies like the Googles and the Facebooks, they're able to build these networks that they can have inside their firewall, like LinkedIn, right? Like we thought we were getting something good by giving them all of our information, but actually we can't, I don't own my profile. They own my profile. I actually have to pay them if I want to go talk to all the people that connected with me. So basically they were able to create business models that I rent back from them, right? Like I'm a renter in that space. So now Web3 comes along, and actually if we think about all these technologies, is they grow like a tree, right? So, hey, I've got this new idea of cloud computing, and then that gets more sunlight, so it grows and grows and grows, and it enables off the top of it more new things to happen. Web3 comes along, new technologies. Let's talk about what the new technologies were that were kind of those fundamental layers, and then what we've seen build off of that. What happened?
Yeah, so what happened is basically that with decentralization at its core, and transparency as well, you're actually distributing the ownership as such, and everything that comes with the ownership as well. With distributing the ownership, you are also distributing the risk. You're also distributing the accountability in a way. So basically you're coming to the completely new business models, which were not maybe possible or not available, at all before, which enable you that on one side you have people who are actually, creating the value. On the other side, you have, the fair system, how that value is being captured and how these people are being awarded for that, and how those people actually own, that value that we are talking about. Maybe it's a bit abstract, because like we can put it in a concrete examples, but right before, you as the owner, or someone like as a large company, you are the one who are actually have the full control in your hands. And if we talk about social media or big platforms, users who are actually generating the content and who are actually creating that value, on one side are not paid for that. They are at the same time, they are the real reason for monetization. On the other side, not just that they are not paid, but whatever they create there, like they can have their total business living, on that platform. Whatever they create can disappear overnight, because someone decided that.
Yep.
So in this sense, when we speak about Web3 and when we speak about ownership, that ownership comes, with accountability, but that ownership comes also with that full meaning that no one can take the value that you captured from you, and no one can actually have something as a bad behavior, unless of course, like if you have security breaches, but let's not go into that now as a risk. I'm talking about this ideal world, how things can function if they're modeled in a right way. So you are basically the one who owns and who is also accountable for the value that you are capturing, and you're rewarded for that. Of course, no one can take that from you.
Yeah, and so like if in Web1 we had a HTML website, we see that in Web3 was the beginning of the rabbit hole that you've heard people talk about, right? And the rabbit hole was opened when Satoshi Nakamoto put a white paper up in some obscure corner of the internet saying, hey, there's this idea for actually how we can create a trusted system that none of us have to trust. And we can do it all using math. And it got laid out in just a few pages. It's a very short document. And it basically talks about, hey, instead of having a trusted person, right? Like I have to trust Google, I have to trust Microsoft. It actually allowed you to trust math, and it had the concept of a blockchain. So what is it? What is a blockchain, and why did we need to spend so much energy to get it going?
Yeah. Okay. So blockchain as such, is not, let's say, the new concept, and is not also the most effective, tool for everything. So I think that we went through that, revolution of, at one point of time, people were just putting blockchain into every business idea, trying to raise money, and it was like, do we really need blockchain there? But then we moved to, as the industry was maturing, of course, we moved to the concrete values, and what piece actually needs to be decentralized. So blockchain enables us in the as you mentioned in the background as the underlying layer, it enables us to interact, with each other without the need to trust each other, because like you have exact exact rules that no one can change. So basically, we can interact without having one centralized authority, or without having a need to trust each other or to know each other at all, because we have the system which is doing that doing that for us. So what do we need in order to come to that phase? We need that distributed ledger. We need to open information to everyone, so everyone can actually go and check and say, okay, this is true, and okay, this piece of data belongs here, so it's not new technology as such, but it's not also the most effective, especially if we speak about proof of work as the consensus algorithm. So with proof of work, we come to your question, why does it take why does it take so much energy? If I got the question right, and there are, of course, other consensus algorithms and other possible solutions, for scaling, but you need to think, what might be sacrificed. So some solutions are going, with sacrificing one angle, like it will be, how centralized, let's say, it will be. And obviously, if we talk, for example, about Ethereum now, Ethereum doesn't want to sacrifice any point there. So they are moving, much slower towards, proof of stake that what it's supposed to be at the beginning. No one could predict that it will take this amount of time and so many people, to be involved there. But it moves because it's the problem is too complex, to be solved. So therefore, it moves slowly, but on the other side, it doesn't go with sacrificing, the security or scalability of the system itself.
Yeah, and so maybe if I can try to paraphrase, is like, hey, as we started creating a global economy, like way back in the day, gold was what was used, and we were able to use it because it was hard to get out of the ground. It was easy to test to see, hey, is this real gold? And there wasn't too much of it. So we kind of had a stability of supply. You couldn't get, like, all of a sudden you couldn't triple the amount of gold. And the times that did happen, it changed everything, right? And so at that very first, the invention of Bitcoin was basically, hey, here's a way to mine a cryptographic puzzle, basically, right? Here's a way to make a computer have to solve a math problem that's hard to do, so that we can trust that computer, and we can set up a protocol so that we have a whole network of computers that are each trying to solve that problem. And no one could copy that whole network. So it created a system that, like gold, was very secure, so that no one could copy it. You knew you could trust that base layer, and then you could start to build things on top of it. Right. So Bitcoin is almost like that store of value across the whole network. And then people could build new technologies on top of it. So what are some of those new technologies on top of Bitcoin? You mentioned Ethereum. What is that, and why? How did it help your company grow?
Yeah, so if you talk about, the Ethereum, it was, one of the biggest things that happened in the space, in my opinion, which was basically, having that world computer, global computer,
Wait,
And
so
you
it's a
have,
global computer? What does that
yeah.
mean? Yeah, what is
So
a
you
global
have the
computer?
concept. Yeah, good question. So you have the concept of your smart contracts. Smart contracts are basically, piece of code that runs, with certain conditions, and those conditions are transparent, to you and me. So basically, when we interact with each other, we know exactly what are the rules, how that interaction will happen, and as I mentioned, there is no need for us to know each other before that, or to know each other at all. We interact, with specific rules, and those rules cannot be changed. So once when it is, there, we all know, how the whole model will look like. So
Yeah.
you have, that world computer, global computer that I said, which enables us to run those programs, and that enables us to build applications, on top of that, and to capture, all the value through these different business models, different small pieces of code.
So like if you and me wanted to start a new organization together, you're in Europe, I'm in Seattle, we would probably have to hire a lawyer who would program a contract. That lawyer would need to understand almost like the operating system of my jurisdiction, the operating system of your jurisdiction, and help advise us on how to draft that contract in a way that is legally defensible. And then if you broke that contract, I would need to then go figure out a whole nother government to be able to work with in order to help enforce that contract. So there's layers. There's the legal layer, there's the nation state layer, there's the policing of contract law that happens. And so what we're saying now is, hey, on top of Bitcoin, we now have the ability to write contracts that can be done in code instead of just in a Microsoft Word document. And it's actually enforced by the security of that network. And it can move money back and forth. It can move information back and forth. It can encode things. It unlocks. It basically, okay. So if Web1 and Web2 allowed us to replace things like media and commerce with technology, right? And we watched that happen across newspapers, radios, movies. And we also saw Amazon come in, and like all the mom and pops in the world had to compete with one global huge company. So now Web3 starts to get into the space that governments, legal institutions, and financial institutions were set up to control. So now we have the ability to actually innovate in all of those spaces. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, not just that. You have that financial model incorporated into on the level of the infrastructure. So basically, the way how we are running the economy itself is incorporated, on the level of the infrastructure, and that also creates, enormous opportunities, which are driver of innovation. Sorry.
Yeah. So today, our current financial system is running on really old servers that, kind of like we talked about how LinkedIn is a social network behind a firewall. Basically, our banking system is on a private company's servers, doing something very similar to what the blockchain is doing, right? Like when I swipe my credit card, there's not somebody taking a stack of $100 bills and giving it to someone else. It's being done in a very similar way. Let's talk about Celsius for a second, and let's talk about how does, from a product management standpoint. So let's just switch a little bit here. in those early days when you were getting it going, what were some of the insights that you saw about how Ethereum was working that enabled you to be able to build a bank on top of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like when we were starting back in 2017, I didn't join yet full time, but I was familiar, with the project, and my friends were working on it full time. So one of the initial, ideas and first tech paper was that Celsius supposed to be peer-to-peer lending platform. So that was one of the ideas. I'm not sure that it went live, that paper, but that was the first experiment that we were running in the background. At that point of time, we realized that the tech stack is not ready for that, and the market is not ready as well. So it's funny because, like, if you take this paper, at some point of time, we just took that like 4 years later, and we could see how big the innovation is during this 4 years period, and some of the things which are captured in that paper on the architectural level were actually built by some other companies. So that's cool to see, but on the other side, it means we were early with that piece of idea. So then we said, okay, the idea of Celsius from the very beginning was how to bring these opportunities, to 100 million of people. And in order to do that, on one side, you need to have innovation, and you need to have innovative business models to do, some part of these processes, as efficient as possible and in a totally different way, so you can actually distribute those rewards back to the community, and you can actually have, the entire flywheel, how those funds are growing. But on the other side, you want to bridge the gaps, and you want to make it accessible. So it's not only about building fully innovative solution. It's also about having familiar interfaces and having familiar experience that people who are not into crypto yet can onboard to, and can get to know the power of crypto. So that's what Celsius was from the very, very beginning. The idea was how we can actually bring that value to 100 million people and onboard 100 million people to crypto. And it was always between those two. On one side, what people know and what people are familiar with when we speak about Web2. On the other side, how can you actually innovate in the Web3 space and come up, with solutions which will bring new financial models, new financial services. So yeah, that's.
I love that, because you actually brought it back to where we started from, which I did not mean to do. But technology and culture, right? Like, basically what you're saying is like, hey, when we were first starting, the technology wasn't there yet, right? Like the wave hadn't come. But also we needed people to be ready. And so as a product manager, you're the person, right? Like, engineers are going to build whatever is possible, right? But maybe they can't think about everything that's happening in the market, and maybe they're not thinking about all the business needs. And really what we're looking for here is, as a product manager, you have to understand exactly where the technology wave is, and also where the cultural and people wave is, so that you can find that sweet spot where, when those two waves combine and the amplitude of their height can be caught, all of a sudden we get people plus technology that, you know, the people can be incentivized with the technology adds value to the people. And now all of a sudden you can grow a company from, you know, zero to huge unicorn that's doing, I mean, what you guys are doing is truly wild. And it was because you were there ahead of the wave and you understood how the waves were coming so that that team could catch and ride as opposed to try to catch up and just paddle.
Exactly. If I think, you know, from this perspective now, if we took the other way and continued, you know, to look only the phase of the way of innovation, we most probably wouldn't make product market fit, you know, because that was too early, you know. So we might create something cool, you know, and that might be, you know, a baseline for some future innovation, but definitely, you know, the market wasn't there yet, you know. So it's very important to balance, you know, those things. How do you actually see the opportunities and what technology can bring, and what is like the real innovation that is coming there? Of course, that innovation is also the driver of your, you know, unique value proposition. But on the other side, you know, what is the market that you can bring that innovation to, and is that market ready for it? So
this just makes so much sense to me, and it's part of why I think having a community like this makes so much sense, because we have all these brains and all these minds that have experience in Web 2, Web 1, maybe physical products. So they have a vast domain knowledge. We also have a whole bunch of people that are understanding this technology at a very deep level. And we already have a user base of people who need to use these types of products. So like, I actually think that we're sitting here in one of the coolest spots, because this group of people is going to be able to see all those waves coming. And we already have a critical mass so that when it's time to launch a product, when any one of us wants to launch anything, we can help each other. And there's no scarcity here where it's like, well, you know, if Magic or Nathan or Michael launches a new product, or Priya, I don't lose by them launching first. I actually win because we all win together. We all grow together.
Exactly. Yeah, that's, you know, I like when we say it's the infinite game, like Simon Sinek, you know, has this clip and book talking about infinite games. So this is definitely, you know, infinite game. That's one side of the story. The another side of the story is like, if you look back, like these are my thoughts on education as such. You know, if you look back 30, 40, 50 years ago, you know, having information was, you know, everything. Like if you have the information and if you can keep that information. But now having the information means nothing, because now we live in the world where you can, at any part of the world almost, you can order the book from Amazon. You know, that doesn't matter. Like the book can go out in US today, and you may order it and it will be shipped to you in the other part of the world. If you want like to go to the most to the best university in the world, like you can go and watch those courses online, you know. So the knowledge itself, the information itself is available globally, you know, and it's a huge step forward, you know, that we can actually access all those information. But on the other side, what we cannot do, and what brings, you know, the unique perspective, is how we actually use that information and how we learn from each other. So when you go, for example, to the MBA program, or like any other, let's say, you know, traditional education program, the value is not anymore, the value doesn't come from that book that you will read or course that you will hear, because like you can hear it from anywhere free of charge. The real value comes when we sit together and work on a concrete problem, concrete case study, or discuss it together. And then, you know, your experience, your previous experience, and what we read and what we heard, and my previous experience come, you know, and expand, you know, on top of each other. So
yeah,
thinking, you know, about that, these kind of discussions is something that cannot be, you know, replicated that easily, and that brings the additional value. I'm not talking, of course, you know, about me here as individual. I'm talking about all of us, you know, who are here together, and all discussions that are about to happen during this day. So that's something, you know, when you have these aha moments, you know, wow effect, and it's, you know, 1 second is enough, you know, to trigger thought for someone else, and then, you know, to come to something great.
I love it. I love it. We're building a network that's going to allow us to not only enjoy working with each other, meet interesting people, solve problems, but it also allows us to incentivize and align action. And so my hope is that 20 years from now, when this group of people meets, there's still like half of us at least show up, right? Because we've all created huge companies. You know, Celsius, we'll laugh because Celsius is the smallest one out of them. And let's build it and make it happen. I should have given more time for questions. I'm happy to stay. Are you happy to stay during the break and answer questions until the next one comes, and people can leave if they want?
Of course.
Cool. Let's open it up to questions. Who's got a question for us?
Hey, it's Trace. I asked one way earlier in the chat. How do I put this? What happens when the rules of a DAO need to change? Like, how do you create a value of perpetual iteration, which we love to do as product managers, in a world where we need to measure 5 times and cut once to enshrine rules and code to make sure that it's trustless and that the, you know, people are following along? It's something that I really struggle with. A lot of us are kind of 0 to 1 product managers used to working in conditions of extreme uncertainty and unknowns, where you're guaranteed to get it wrong, and that first pancake's going to be an ugly doozy, but then you can ultimately iterate to something amazing. So how do you do that with a DAO, for example, with Banyan or your DAO? Like, how do you iterate? And
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question if you want, Petar.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's going to be massive trial and error, right? Like again, we're called Banyan DAO because our strategy is our story, and we're growing like a tree. So we're going to send out branches in a whole bunch of different directions, and some of them are going to hit light, and the ones that hit light are going to get more resources, and we're going to grow in the direction that works. There's a good chance that we're going to hit, we're going to grow, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we've got too many members to be able to like all act like we're part of Congress here, and we're going to have to figure out what that looks like. The cool thing is that we're keeping it simple at this point in time. So it's not like we have a constitution and like a Supreme Court. Like, we're not as complex as trying to govern a whole country. We have a simple vote, and it's on DAO House right now. And so as a group, we can actually have a single vote to move our entire treasury, to move those smart contracts into a whole nother platform. And so as a group, we're going to be able to make that decision together. But I sure as heck don't know what the future holds. But that's why it's so important that there's a lot of us thinking about it, and that we're networking with other DAOs so that we can understand their best practices and adopt them. You have anything to add, Petar?
I don't know if it's just me.
I'm not.
Someone is speaking, sorry.
Hey, Nathaniel, you had your hand up for like a follow-up or something?
Oh, yeah, I just have a quick question. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Tell me what you think is the future. Like, where are we going to be in 3 years, and then in like 30 years, like in those two worlds? Like 3 years, what's going to be different, and then what's going to be different in 30 years, in your opinion?
Whew. Awesome question. 3 years from now, I think we'll be amazed by some totally new business models, and the way we actually use this technology, which will be, much more accessible to people, who are not able, who are not, let's say, that tech savvy. So I believe, that free.
Can I ask a question about the business model? Do you think we'll find new business models? Like, do you think you'll see any new business models, or like a recreation of business models?
How do I like to explain it? Like, it's easy when you look back, to see key moments that happened. And for example, if we talk about, music industry and how do we consume music, you used to have radio, and then you had tapes, and then at some point you had CDs, and you're driving, for example, and it was a huge way forward when you could buy a CD on a petrol station and put it in your car and listen to the music that you want, so you were not dependent on the radio anymore. But now, like, you have all songs that you can imagine in your pocket with Spotify or that doesn't matter, any streaming service. Now you can actually produce as an artist and get paid as an artist in a totally different way. So the whole business model of the industry changed, and the albums are not the same, the same type as they used to be, so you have these singles coming out, and if you want to be in the industry, you need to have a single once per month, and everything changed, but also our consumption changed. If you look, how do you drive a car now, and how do you listen to the music now, and that any song that you can imagine and that you want to listen to is like one tap away, or even with Siri, it's just one sentence away. So when you look back, that whole journey that we went, and the experience and the business model as well totally changed. But it's not easy, to imagine how it will look like if you look forward. So each improvement, each innovation there, like having CD, or having iPhone, iPod, then iPhone, or having streaming services, and platforms such as Spotify or YouTube. All of that changed the way how we produce, or how do we consume the content, let's say songs in this case. And I think similar things will happen. Similar things will happen, with this industry. But we are still in the phase for most of the things that we are describing them. Exactly, what Igor said. Now Spotify will be disrupted with NFTs. That's also what I believe. But looking back, it is easy to connect those dots and to say, okay, these were the key drivers of innovation, or these were the key moments. Looking forward, of course, that's not easy. We can describe some sci-fi, future, without actually, seeing how it will look like. So, in my opinion, we will come to some innovative business models, completely new, And at one point of time, what I think success will be to look back and to say, okay, how did we, live differently? How could we, accept different models, and this is much more fair. So when we come to that point to say, okay, this looks fair, and this really matches on one side people who are value creators, and on the other side, those value creators are rewarded and can live fairly because of that value which is created.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to see is, I think we're going to see every single product category that we currently have 10 different people at least try to do it on the blockchain, and the ones that work are going to get scaled, and the ones that don't work are going to fail. And so in that 3-year period of time, I think we're going to see a lot of product innovation. We're going to see user experience get better. We're going to see things get smoother. In that 20-year period of time, all the lessons that got learned by how we network people together and incentivize them, I think are going to change every single institution that we have, from the new startup all the way up to national governments. I think it's really clear that there is a lot of friction and a lot of baggage from 400 or 500 years of corporations being in place, right? Like if you think about it, like corporations starting had some really positive and super duper negative effects, right? Like there was like one floor of people in London took over the entire subcontinent of India. It's like one of the worst things that happened. Like if you look at colonization, all fueled by the invention of the corporation, all of it, right? And where we're at now, though, is instead of all of us joining a corporation and the corporation is shaped like this, right? And it's like, hey, you have to do what this person says, and you're going to get sued if you don't return on shareholder value. Now all of a sudden we can grow a corporation like this, and we could try a whole bunch of stuff, and we can all help each other. So I think that inversion of how we manage and how we grow things is going to completely fundamentally shift every institution. Lakshmi.
Yes, hi. I have a question which goes back to basics pretty much. Like you mentioned that, we have, you were talking about the example of forming a contract and having law enforcement and multiple layers of it around the world enforce it. So aren't we just replacing that with people who are actually writing smart contracts? How do you, as a layperson or somebody who's even starting a new project, if you are not really doing that yourself, you are putting your trust in somebody who is actually doing that for you. So what is the difference there, or is this my understanding right?
You want to go first?
I can go. So you're totally right. There is a risk there. On the other side, it just means that we are too early. We are too early in a way that like the tool stack that we can use is so it's not there yet. So people are developing and creating new tools which will actually enable us to write smart contracts in a different way. And you can also consider it like creating a website. So right. Creating a website, like 25-30 years ago required pure development skills. But if you look forward, you'd have now a bunch of CMS solutions where people can create simple websites on their own. When you have a bunch of plugins, open source, that you can just incorporate that functionality into your website. You even have those drag and drop website builders, not just CMS solutions. So the whole path in between, if we talk about building a website and the tool stack itself, was incredible when we look back. It still doesn't mean that you don't need developers in order to build a website, but in order to build, something simple, to capture your presentation, online, you have totally different opportunities than what used to be like 15 years ago, for example. So
I would just say on top of that, also, all these contracts are in the open. So when you go to sign a contract with your wallet, you can read the code yourself, and other smart people can read the code, so it's transparent. And also, you don't have to understand case law in order to interpret it, right? Like, you don't have to understand what's happened and how it's going to be interpreted.
Right.
And lastly, basically that's it, right? Like, it's all done in the, lastly, it's the right to exit. So in our DAO, for instance, right, like, you don't have to be here, right? Like, I can't live in my house or be a citizen of my country and say, hey, these rules no longer apply to me. In this new Web3 space, the networks that we create, you can leave, right? And we're designing these things so that they're open source, and so that, like, you can bring your share of the treasury, you can stay connected to the people you want to stay with. So by building that right to exit and that right to fork the open source contract, you can leave when the contracts don't keep adding value to you.
Got it. Okay. And I have, sorry, one last thing to add to this. I have heard that, I don't know if this is true, if do these things still get audited by somebody? Because I heard that term in one of the presentations yesterday. Do the smart contracts that are in place when you put in, so as a consumer, this is as a developer that we spoke, right? As a product developer. But if I'm a consumer and I don't know what I'm getting into, is there some sort of somebody like an open source, it could be an open source body, but who audits these smart contracts, who say, okay, if I see this seal of authentication or whatever it is, I know that this is being looked at by somebody?
Yeah, there are companies that are doing that as part of their, let's say, core business model, core business service. But in reality, those companies have such a huge backlog and such a huge demand.
I can imagine.
And it's super expensive also to run a good contract audit. So there is no one straight answer like yes, it is happening. I think that some projects are also faking the audit of the contract. Also it's a huge security risk and concern, of course. So we are still, as I said earlier, in this space, including that part as well.
Got it.
Petar, we're running up on our time here, and there's going to be tons of time for questions throughout the day. I loved having you here, and I hope that we can do lots more Banyan DAO talks where you can come join. They don't have to be an all-day thing. You want to join us in the future?
Of course.
Yes, I like getting that in public, so there's nice public pressure. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Round of applause for Petar.
Thank you very much.